Welcome to Beyond Places, the podcast about the planning, design, and leadership of the communities and cities we call home. I'm Carmi Palafox, an urban planner and economist. Join me in conversations with thought leaders and visionaries from around the world. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Beyond Places. Our guest is a director and the CEO of Wenceslao and Associates, one of the most established publicly listed integrated real estate development and construction companies in the Philippines. They are the developer of Aseana City, a 204-hectare mixed-use district fronting Manila Bay, envisioned to be the entertainment and lifestyle center of the Philippines. He is also the managing director of the group's real estate development subsidiaries, the Aseana Real Estate Services and Management Corporation, a fully integrated real estate services company, and U City Solutions, which provides IT solutions specifically catered to the real estate sector. Buds is a global governing trustee for ULI, the Urban Land Institute, and is an active member of leading business organizations in the Philippines, such as the Management Association of the Philippines and the IT and Business Process Association of the Philippines. He has over 20 years of experience in financial analysis, leasing and brokerage, development, project management, and property management. He studied management economics at Ateneo de Manila University and completed his Master of Science in Real Estate Development degree at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Welcome, Buds Wenceslao.
Thanks, Carmi. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Good morning, and it's so nice to see you again, Buds.
Absolutely. It's great to finally catch up. How are things in Sydney?
Good. It's really good. I'm looking forward to see Manila though and see what you've been up to in Aseana City in a few months.
Absolutely. Next time you're in town, please let me know so we can give you a tour of all of the new and upcoming stuff that we've been working on here in Aseana.
First off, Buds, if you could please tell our audience a bit more about Wenceslao and Associates.
Wenceslao is our family company. It was started in 1965 by my grandfather, Delphine Wenceslao. We're actually already the third generation of Wenceslaos working for the family business. We started off as government contractors doing a lot of horizontal construction, roads, bridges, infrastructure. And then back in the late 80s, we started doing land reclamation. We did Aseana City, I think around 1989. And we started doing that. It got finished around the late 90s. Then started doing our developments already, the infrastructure for our reclamation projects. And in 2004, we started with our first commercial building. In 2009, we did our first office building. We're already on our fifth office building. In 2015, we did our first residential development. We're actually building 4 more right now. And midway through that, we started doing land leasing as well, from government institutions to massive discount warehouses for shopping, like SNR. Malls like Ayala Land is also leasing from us, as well as event centers, schools, gas stations, everything that you would need to find to complete a community or in a township development. And right now we're still ongoing. We're busy developing around 300,000 square meters of residential and office developments in our development pipeline.
Wow. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a 204-hectare area. How much of it is already built up?
So we still have, from our initial 57 hectares, we developed roughly 27 hectares. That's in terms of land lease developed, including our future development pipeline. So we still have about 29 hectares left in our land bank. So that's obviously a lot of runway left for our developments for the next couple of decades.
So when you started your development, Buzz, because it's really interesting when you were talking about the history of your company, because you started as a construction and an engineering company. Was it always the intention to get into vertical or into real estate development?
Absolutely not. Being a construction company, obviously we've seen the peaks and valleys of the construction timeline, construction cycle. But when we were able to land this reclamation project, and then we were able to finish it during the late 90s, which was the start of the Asian financial crisis. Our chairman, my father's original vision was to basically just reclaim and sell everything and move to the next construction or reclamation project. But we got stuck with the land, and we just decided to start doing our own developments, and it hit off from there, from selling our first parcel to leasing our first land to SNR, to building our first office building, and it just took off. And now real estate development is already 90% of our business.
But you still do construction?
We still do. Everything that we would need to plan, build, operate, and maintain a city is already done in-house. So we're doing most of our developments already in-house. So our construction arm right now is focused on developing our internal pipeline and making sure that the city is maintained and operated at the standards that we want to keep for our locators.
So you're the first developer from the Philippines that I'm having as a guest, Buds. And I mean, I know who you are also as a person. You're very passionate about advocating for, better places in the Philippines. And, with the big responsibility, but also I'm sure it's very exciting to be not just planning, but, managing a citywide development. So when you started this development during your dad's time, I think before you came in, how has the master plan evolved to respond to, what's going on with people, what's going on with the economy and the environment?
I think, it's constantly evolving and changing. You're an urban planner and you're a master planner yourself. Initially, admittedly, we thought we were just going to do one master plan and just execute that, for the next 2 or 3 decades. But after the first 2 years, we quickly realized that we need to set up our own team in-house in order to change, in order to evolve and adapt to the changing trends. Things like widening our sidewalks, lowering or decreasing the plot sizes to manage the floor area ratios, everything from increasing our open spaces and public spaces, again, to cater to the demand for unexclusive open spaces in Metro Manila right now. So all of that is constantly evolving, and we want to see ourselves as rapidly adapting versus having a fixed set of master plan and then executing that. And even now, every time we travel, or every time I travel or I see something new that we can adapt or we can implement in Aseana, that's something that we can do immediately, just because the entire team, in terms of our consultants, even the staff, even landscaping, we have our internal horticulturists, we do that already all in-house.
So you've increased your public open spaces since the start of development?
There's fixed guidelines in the building code. So we always want to see how we can change that or adapt to the changing times. For simple things like maybe an average sidewalk in Manila is about 1.5 meters. So in Aseana, the minimum is about 5 meters. And on the major roads, it can go as wide as 10 meters, where 50% of that is protected, which will have arcades or canopies, and 50% will be exposed to the elements.
So walkability is a topic I'm very passionate about, Bud. So when I was doing my thesis for my master's in urban planning, it was actually about improving walkability in the Philippines. And it's very nice to hear you as a developer talking about, how you're improving it. And one of the things I remember, that was, I think, almost 20 years ago when I did my study, but it was looking at what would make people want to walk more in Metro Manila. And usually, the excuses that we hear are, oh, it's hot, people wouldn't walk, or they wouldn't walk because it's raining. So the reasons were about things you can't really control. But then when I interviewed and surveyed pedestrians, people who live and work in Metro Manila, they said, actually, if the facilities were there, we would walk more. If, the pavements were wide enough and connected, we would walk more. And if we saw interesting things to see, and if we felt safe and secure, then also we would walk more. So it's great to hear that you're going way beyond the minimum requirements to start with in Aseana.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you build better sidewalks, there will be more pedestrians. I think it's as simple as that. But you touch on all the right points. It's about the experience of walking, being able to feel safe, having a nice experience in terms of landscaping, seeing lively public spaces through ground floor retail, through public art, through being climate protected with again with canopies and arcades, with trees. All of this adds to the experience of having a nice walk. And the climate is there, but it's also pretty hot in Singapore, but you see a lot of people walking. And that goes to show the fact that if you build these kinds of first world or these kinds of public amenities that everyone, not just people from the office or people from the condos, might enjoy, even transients or non-residents in a city, I think it will be used. People always talk about, I think we talked about this before, like informally, like, when you talk about mobility, everybody thinks of something with wheels. But the most important, I think, mobility that's being defined right now is, using our legs to be mobile, especially within the last mile of every city, and that's what we're trying to improve right now.
And we're all pedestrians. I mean, even if you're chauffeur driven at some point in your journey, you have to walk from your car to your final destination.
Absolutely. I don't know who said it, but I always see it in the urban planning books where the real test of having a first world development or first world city is not when people use cars. It's when rich people use public transport, right? So I think if you're thinking of the most public transport, again, I always like to think that our legs are the most public way to transport ourselves.
It was Mayor Enrique Peñalosa who said that, the
Oh,
former mayor of Bogota in
yeah.
Colombia. Yeah, and it's a good point, Buds, because again, from my previous studies, I learned that people would take public transport if they know that if for some reason the bus or the train break down, it's safe for them to walk. Um, yeah, so it's a good point that you raise. Another thing also, when you're in Metro Manila, you have pockets of very good walkable places. Much looking forward to walking around Aseana City. But, like when I lived in Makati, like I walk to work every day, at least within the CBD. When you go to places like BGC, you can walk as well. So you have these nice pockets of places where you can walk, you feel safe, you feel secure, and you can last all day really and keep busy and keep entertained. It's ironic though that we have to drive or go to these places to be able to walk. What do you think are initiatives that developers can do to work with a local government or national government so that we can improve connectivity between these nice pockets of development and even walk outside of these nice pockets of development?
Overall, even for third-party developers that enter Aseana, we always try to explain to them that they are a part of the urban fabric that we're trying to develop. So if let's say you're building a building and there's a required canopy or arcade there so that we can make sure that all of the sidewalks have climate protection, that's something that we convince them to do for the sake of the entire community. And for developers, I think it's pretty important to learn what the overall mobility master plan is of the government, whether it's through the city or through the national, or if you're in a national road, just so you can see how you can add value to the overall development. And that's what we're trying to do here in Aseana. I always say that we stand on the shoulder of giants, and we see these developments as something that we can emulate and even improve. And hopefully, somebody will see Aseana and say, I want to do a better development. And that's something that we would want to also inspire. And as as the city keeps evolving, even things that we thought were fine 5 years ago, we saw it and it's like, oh, we're looking at the sidewalk. Oh, we should have actually put in more outlets or more spaces for outside dining because of what happened during the pandemic. And right now that's already what we're doing and what we're implementing in our new buildings.
And I think it's good that as you're doing it and people visit, local government leaders from whether it's Parañaque or Metro Manila or even outside, when they visit, they're like, oh, this can be done because I see people walking in Aseana, so I can also do this in public places in my locality.
Yeah, so that's why we try we try to be involved with our other real estate organizations like Urban Land Use. So not only so that we can show them what we're doing, but so we can also see the best practices that are being done in the Philippines and around the region.
So, but I also wanted the audience to learn more about you. So you studied a business course. How has your journey been being involved in real estate and in developing Aseana?
It's been a very fulfilling vocation. Obviously, building better places and being involved in the built environment is truly a passion of mine. While I am doing, our company is doing a lot of vertical developments. The horizontal infrastructure is also very exciting. That's why sidewalks and open spaces and public spaces are also a passion of mine. And I like to see how our vertical developments can also add value and can also add value to the entire urban fabric. This is why I believe that focusing on public spaces is a unique opportunity for being a township developer.
You were very excited when you were talking about Parkal. Well, the last time we spoke in person. If you can talk about that, please.
Sure. So Parkal is a combination of park and calle. That's why it's Parkal. So it's a mixture of three things. It's a mixture of retail, commercial, and again, public space. So it's 9 small buildings that's connected by a linear park or a linear greenway and have interconnecting bridges with on the second, third, and fourth floor. This development is also connected by external bridges to our other higher density office and condo projects. So what's unique about this is that during obviously during the pandemic, a lot of city dwellers wanted access to first world and unique public spaces. So we never expected that the pandemic would happen when we started developing Paragal. But I think, given what we're seeing right now, I think this would add a unique amenity to Aseana City. Obviously, we would love for you to see it. What's especially unique about this is that it also has a unique canopy that's being built on top of it. Again, to add to the climate protected walkable infrastructure inside Aseana. So this will obviously be a new amenity and a new development that will be unique for Aseana.
When are you opening this, Buds?
So we're opening the first phase by end of this year.
Yeah, and in time for Christmas, should be good to go shopping and walk around there.
I actually saw this canopy in Singapore when I visited during a study tour that I went to. It's pretty interesting, again, since we're talking about climate protection and the heat and humidity in the Philippines. So when you're outside the canopy, you can feel how piercing the heat is. But when you're under it, it's totally night and day. You can feel how cool and how shady it is, similar to standing under a tree. That's how it feels like. So it would be I would definitely want you to come and experience how that feels. As somebody who walks, it's something that provides like a unique feeling for pedestrians.
So going back to walkability, because it's not done so often what you're doing in Aseana, because maybe there's a perception that if I widen the sidewalk, that's less space for saleable land, so to speak, or even you building this canopy and this wide walkway, that could have been saleable or leasable space. It's like eating up on my profit. But then also on the other end of the spectrum, when you actually increase the space for walkability, you'll encourage more people to come in to shop and work and invest there. Is that the case, or at this point for you, it's really more of an investment to lure in pedestrians into Aseana?
As the overall master developer, I believe in the whole is more than the sum of its parts. That's how we view it. Overall, in as much as it's nice to have glass facades, and glass curtain walls in buildings. At the end of the day, when you're walking, how often do you look up? So we want to be sure that the development inside Aseana makes sense on a city level. If I was doing just one building in one area, maybe that might be the consideration. But since we're doing a whole citywide or township development, we want to be sure that all of these unique elements are integrated, similar to how you'd find when you're traveling, and that experience, that feeling that you get, that sense of place and how distinct it is. You don't go to another country and say the best experience I had was because I saw this building. It was because of the whole everything around it, from walking, from the food, from the people. So those are the combinations that we're currently exploring and experimenting with to find that unique identity for Aseana City.
One of the many hats you wear is as director of the Aseana Business Park Association. So really, you don't stop at developing the roads and the buildings, but you're really also managing the development and, as you call it, the city. What do you think we can do in terms of future proofing Aseana, and especially considering, in the Philippines, we're very high risk with climate change? How are you future proofing Aseana to ensure residents and people working there that we consider these things when we plan the development?
So, similar to all developments, the work doesn't stop after we build it and turn it over to our office tenants or residents. So we want to be sure that the development or the project is still maintained at the level that we require afterwards. That's why we set up that estate association to ensure that, even in the future, we want to be sure that, to put it simply, if something gets broken, it gets fixed right away. That's what we're trying to instill in our property management team. I guess that's why we wanted to complete the entire team in terms of the skills or the specific competencies we need to maintain the city. That's why we're trying to do everything in-house to be sure that that level of service and standards is kept perpetually.
And but if you talk a lot of people, and if you read newspapers, the highlight tends to be on the challenges, the challenges with recovery following the pandemic, rising inflation, weakening peso. But to you, I wanted to ask you, what are things you're excited about, let's say, in the next 5 to 10 years?
Pre-pandemic, there was a lot of movement towards how everybody wanted to be in cities. I'm sure you read several articles about that. I think that I've seen like several stuff about 60 or 70% of the world's population will live in cities by 2050, something like that. So that's why all of our executions have been geared towards that. There was some hiccups obviously caused by the pandemic, but overall, what we've seen is that when mobility is hindered, that's when it becomes troublesome for residents. And that's why we're focusing on not making sure that our development, especially Aseana City's mobility will not be hindered by any future pandemic. That's why we're focusing on making sure that none of these areas can be locked down in a sense, and people will have access to basic services like groceries, drugstores, and even healthcare. And this is why we're also excited about having one of the best medical institutions to put up shop in Aseana City as well, St. Luke's Medical Center.
We we would like to see more public-private partnership, and we've seen very good examples of how it's happening in the Philippines. But to you, as being in the private sector, what do you think are maybe policies or things that the government can do that you think would really accelerate growth and development in the Philippines?
So there's been a lot of movement, obviously, towards improving the public infrastructure for transport. You're heavily involved with that as well. But I think just the basic elements, trying to upgrade or update the building code, I think it's something that we can see. I'm also excited about putting in affordable housing measures also to the Philippines. Because, right now, most of the affordable housing is naturally occurring, people developing condos and renting it out. But in other countries, there are affordable housing initiatives that are being government-led, like, for example, HDB in Singapore is obviously a world leader in that. And I think if we can find some movement or that's also going to be very exciting for the Philippines.
You are starting developing affordable housing?
So right now, most of our developments are market-based, actually. But yeah, it's something that we're looking at, all of the companies that are being based right now, and not just in Aseana, but in other cities. We see that obviously a lot of the major considerations why there's so much traffic is that people live 1 to 2 hours where they actually work. So we're looking at ways to find a solution for that. That's why affordable housing is one of our initiatives.
Looking forward to see more of what you're doing in that space, Buds. You've been working in your company and in the real estate sector for 20 years this year. And, I'm sure you've been seeing how the sector has been progressing in a good way. What are good things that you've been seeing in cities and in the real estate sector in the last 20 years?
Even during the pandemic, I think a lot of it has been focused on making cities livable, right? And there there's a wide definition of what makes cities livable, but at least for us, I see a lot more people investing and looking at cities with very good public amenities and public spaces. That's why we're focusing a lot of our efforts towards that as well. And as much as we're building, these huge vertical developments in the offices and the condos. And once we actually finish about 50% of our public space initiatives, I believe we're going to finally see how people react and people adapt and experience these public spaces.
I'm very much looking forward to what you have in store in Aseana City, Buds, in the coming years. And congratulations on all the good initiatives that you're doing and for doing so well with your developments.
Thanks, Carby. Thanks for having me. And I'd love to show you around and see what are the new developments here in Aseana.
Thank you, Buds.
All right. Thanks, Carmy. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Beyond Places. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to connect with me on social media and carmypalafox@gmail.com. If you enjoy this podcast, please do subscribe. Bye and see you again in the next episode.